You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the eMarketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the eMarketing Association. Today we're doing something a little bit new. CMO Roundtables are an idea that Ian Dowe came up with in collaboration with me and the eMarketing Association team. So Ian invited a top-notch group of folks here onto the call so that we could really delve deeply into a topic. And so Ian has ideated around the topic and the team has ideated around the topic. So Ian, I'll hand over the reins to you. Unfortunately, I'll have to catch a flight, so I won't be able to stay for the whole thing. But I'll look forward to seeing the recording afterwards. So Ian, off to you.
Hey, Kevin, thank you. This is really wonderful, and it's been great to collaborate with you and the eMarketing Association on this particular topic, and I really appreciate it. So, with that said, we're going to jump right into it. And so, just to give the listeners an opportunity to say, okay, what the heck are these guys going to be talking about? So, the title of our program today is No Signals Lost, the techniques and processes of well-aligned teams in driving go-to-market success. And the panel that we have today are folks that are subject matter experts in various aspects of marketing, from brand to product to comms to marketing operations to sales. And so really, this is going to be a great conversation that is going to touch on a number of topics. At the heart of it, what we're trying to do today is to say, hey, can we break out of the silos when it comes to marketing? Oftentimes, we have folks that are disciplined in certain areas, and we do a good job at what we are supposed to do. But how do you string it along in the sense of, like, think about a train. You have an engine and you've got cars and you've got a caboose. And, in essence, all of it is about delivering goods or people to a destination. And I kind of think about it in the sense of developing a GTM strategy in a similar analogy. So with that said, my name is Ian Dowe. I have been a marketing leader in the health technology, healthcare space for the last 15 years, and I've been a marketer for well over 25, working both on the agency side as well as the client side. Most recently, my career has been in healthcare, in particular, both on the provider and then also on the payer side, and then most recently, in the last 10 years, for health technology companies. And so, have a broad view, particularly around healthcare and technology, and in particular SaaS and B2B marketing strategies. So that's kind of who I am, and I'm going to have the rest of the team, starting with Joanna, introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. Joanna Bittle, Managing Director of Growth at Marketbridge. Just very briefly, over the last 20 years, me and my team have been helping companies across the entire spectrum, from enterprise, mid-market, SMB, really figuring it out. No signal loss across brand to product to ICP, and how to connect all of it. So nice. Thank you for having me.
Next up, let's go with Kris.
Sure. My name is Kris Catterall. I'm currently the Director of Marketing Operations at HealthEdge. I've been in the marketing operations space now for, about 10 to 12 years, and have worked closely with a number of people on this call. So it's a really great opportunity. Very excited about our chat today. I'll be covering things as it pertains to marketing technology, the tools that we use, how we integrate with the product marketing team, how we integrate with the sales team, and really support the go-to-market motions that we do at HealthEdge.
Excellent. Dan?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Ian, thanks. And Kevin, you too, for putting this together. Excited to be here. Been in healthcare marketing, specifically working with health IT, digital health companies, some life science, and pharma tech companies for over 25 years. And I come at it from the kind of the corporate communications, PR, earned media side, but not just looking at it through the lens of PR equals press release, but how can you incorporate top of funnel brand awareness into the holistic marketing approach and move things down funnel as well to help on the lead gen side as well. So excited to be here.
Excellent. And Sophia?
Thank you, Ian, for pulling this team together. I'm really excited to be here as well. I am currently a product marketing leader at a healthcare IT firm. I've been in healthcare IT and marketing for healthcare IT for just about 12 years now. Core competency is in product marketing, but I've also worked in demand gen and in market intelligence. I love storytelling and market analysis and lead generation. A true love for building teams and bringing new products to market. I've been mostly on the health plans business for the past 7 years and have really enjoyed that.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least is Janet.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you for having me today. My name is Janet Barros, and I have experience both. Well, first of all, I'm VP of Sales at HealthEdge. I have experience on the payer side and provider side, and I've held many roles from launching a new product with the sales team to running the business development team for HealthEdge, and now as a solo contributor in sales. I'm excited to be here today.
Excellent. Excellent. So, folks, there you have it. That's the team. So let's dive right in. The first question I kind of have is who owns the go-to-market and narrative? Who controls and develop and establishes the value prop, the particular messaging? And, the marketplace is pretty broad. So for this exercise, I kind of say, let's narrow it a little bit and use the profile of a software as a service organization, SaaS company with multiple ICPs with a single TAM or addressable market, right? So just to add context in terms of guiding the conversation. So one of the first things I wanted to ask is, what is the role of brand marketing versus product marketing in shaping the value proposition? And for this question, I'm going to have Joanna on the brand side and Sophia on the product side take a stab at that. Joanna, you want to lead us?
Sure. I'm going to start with a stat from Sixth Sense report that was just published a couple of months ago. It's probably the most quoted stat at Marketbridge in the last quarter, which is B2B buyers are nearly 70% through their purchasing process before engaging with sellers. So what it means is that they already made some perceptions, some decisions before even connecting with your sales organization. So what happens? Everything on the top of the funnel gets to be a part of your brand marketing. This is where the brand marketing has the most influence over that sales cycle. So what we like to say is that brand marketing meets demand, meets product. What we've seen with organizations is that typically CMO owns the entire narrative, but then very quickly it becomes two teams, brand team and product team. And the best organizations that we work with actually collaborate, work on these strategies together. It's a full funnel narrative, full funnel push, either at the ABM side or demand side, but the brand to demand concept is really critical. And brand marketing is not just the activation at the brand level, but also messaging, positioning, creative, influencers, social PR, everything around brand. So Sophia, I'll let you talk a little bit about the product side of that equation.
Sure. The way I kind of keep these two separate in my head is brand marketing is, really the vibe, and product marketing is the why. I think Apple does a really fantastic job of brand marketing. They're not selling you the latest chip inside of a MacBook. They're making you really feel that Apple stands for innovation, for creativity, for thinking differently. Product marketing is a little bit different. That's where we get into specifics. So that's taking that vibe and that high-level story and making it tangible. Here is why this specific product solves your problem better than anything else out there. So I think the best companies in the world get that piece right. And I think it's really important for healthcare IT in the industry where I work. Because if you create this brand that people recognize but aren't sure what you do, or maybe you have products that have great features but no emotional connection to it, you're really not speaking to those buyers.
Yeah, so thank you. And Sophia, great job explaining it. I think a lot of times companies don't and can I shouldn't say don't or cannot. They have a hard time distinguishing. And the complexity in that equation is that if you're a corporate entity with multiple products, yeah, you could be, distinguished with I'm Acme Corporation and I have, Acme Cream and Acme this and Acme that, and it's easier. Oftentimes, especially in the SaaS market, I see companies that are a single product company and there is no distinction or very little distinction between the company itself and the product. And in scenarios sometimes where you go into a sales pitch, you get confused, or I see customers getting confused as to which should I be really focused on. Is it the company or is it the product? And the two are so intermeshed that it's hard to distinguish. So thank you for clarifying that for me. The one other thing that I wanted to do a follow-up with in this context of this question is, we have dual, what we call the ICPs, right? Ideal customer, ideal company profile. And both, again, Joanna and Sophia, can you maybe shed some light on what is the strategy in terms of developing both? Sophia, maybe lead us this time.
Sure. I think most people think about ideal customer profile as just who the buyer is, their title, their pain point, their decision-making power. But in B2B, the company itself is, the company itself is just as important. So are they a good fit? Do they have, regulatory pressures? Do they have tech gaps? Do they have performance issues? So better messaging that's able to talk to the buyer and the business problem, targeting to make sure that they're not just going after certain personas, but you're going after ideal customer profiles as well. In healthcare, a director of customer performance or patient experience who wants certain tracking, but their business is maybe mid-size or struggling with compliance and missing benchmarks. You need to be able to solve for both of those. So solving for that persona problem, but then also making sure that you understand the company profile and their place in the market.
That's right. I think the place in the market is critical. From our perspective, we see different go-to-market approaches for enterprise, upper mid-market, and SMB. These are different demand generation frameworks, different ABM frameworks, different sales frameworks. So it's often what we see with clients is they bundle go-to-market approach for, let's say, mid-market and enterprise, and it's just not as effective. So as Sophia said, really understanding the ideal company profile with all of the different technographics and kind of initiative, sales motions they're going through is super critical, because then we can create those segments separately. Separate segment for enterprise, separate segment for mid-market, and so forth. And then we can have specific frameworks targeting and influencing those groups. So it's an exercise that typically is done with the sales teams. Sales teams are the most knowledgeable when it comes to really understand the nuances of different company segments. And that's typically where we start our due diligence with sales teams, and then crossover of really understanding your existing customers today. You have the data in your CRM system. So really doing audit of that data is critical.
And I'll piggyback on that, because I think it's important to recognize that as teams are doing that, to loop in your marketing operations folks sooner rather than later, so that as you're formulating those ICPs and those different segments, making sure, Joanna, like you have the data in your CRM, or you have the ability to actually build out those segments from a technological perspective before you're actually ready to go to market, and then you're not playing catch up.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Kris, because here's another area where I like to think about the entire go-to-market strategy being kind of the building of a home.
Mhm.
And there are different aspects to putting together the structure, such as digging a hole and putting in a foundation and then framing it, and then all the other components all the way up to then finally putting furniture in the room and stuff like that. I think that it's good to get the perspective here because I think the end result is only as good as the foundation that you put in place. And for instance, I've seen over my years in marketing where companies don't do, I don't say don't do, but the foundational aspect of it in terms of developing the ICP, both at the customer as well as the company, in terms of what is your addressable market, and then actually exporting and importing this information into a CRM before you even develop the delivery of the GTM is an area where I think a lot of companies miss. And so I think it's an important aspect to build in the plan. Um, in terms of moving on to another question, which is the positioning and competitive differentiation, competitive intelligence, understanding your competitors, their place in the market, ensuring sales uses this information to personalize their kind of activities. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on that, and in particular, Janet and Sophia, and I'll throw it first to Janet, and then Sophia, if you could opine on this a little bit. Could you just give us some insights into that landscape and why it's so important?
Sure, absolutely. And I'd like to start out by saying that we're constantly learning, especially in healthcare, technology in general. Things are always changing. The assumptions that we have about a company or the why that Sophia spoke about with our prospects is changing. And so I think that what we're doing now with our sales team is we're going deeper in with our demo team and our clinicians as well, because they notice those little nuances that are happening in the industry, and also with when we go through the decision process with companies. And so I think just really gut checking and making sure that you have the latest on the competitive landscape, whether it's a company that you're competing with, a government entity that's pushing influence. And so I think that's what I would say around competitive.
Yeah, Janet, I agree with everything you're saying. I think, really understanding the market. So who are the competitors? What do they offer? Where are your shortfalls as a company against them? And how do you message for that? And then making sure that this isn't a set it and forget it. This is continuously updating, continuously training sales to use this intel to personalize outreach and highlight where that differentiation is. Making sure that you're tracking those competitive moves and adjusting your message to keep that edge. So looking at their press releases, looking at their website, looking at, which events are they going to. I think there's a big win-loss piece to competitive intel too. So making sure that you're doing win-loss analysis, ideally third-party win-loss analysis, where you are losing to those competitors, to really understand why did you win against them? Why did you lose against them?
So to follow up on that, and thank you, Janet, and thank you, Sophia, just to follow up a little bit on that, do you think companies do a good job understanding the competitive landscape? And number two, also for internal consumption process, understanding why you may have won a contract or why you may have lost a contract. Do you think it's a gap within organizations, or do you think organizations realize the value in that and make it a standard practice?
I think it's a gap. I've been in marketing and tech for over 12 years now, and I haven't seen anybody do it really well yet. And I think it's tough because a lot of competitors are private organizations and there's only so much publicly available data. So I think getting out there and talking to clients is going to be the best way to get that competitive intel. Yes, you can speak with, consultants and others to really understand it and read annual reports that come out. But I think this is really hard for companies. Joanna, I don't know what you've seen, or Janet, but I haven't seen it done really well.
Yeah, we very, very rarely get win-loss analysis from our clients. And in our experience, we see a pretty good understanding of competitive advantage. What we don't see as much is the actual activation on it. Having competitive displacement plays, having sales playbooks that are truly based on that competitive analysis. We just don't see a lot of activation, which is probably the best way to approach, especially when there is an easy switch. Sometimes it's really hard to replace an existing vendor that's a completely different environment. But in situations where switch is available, those type of strategies could work well.
Yeah, and I think where Joanna mentioned that 70% of your research is done before you ever come in contact with the company or salesperson. And we're noticing that sales cycles are so much longer, so detailed, with a much larger group that's analyzing you. And what I'm finding when we debrief, when we win or we lose, which we do here, they have perceptions that are right or wrong, in our favor or not. And then I don't see an action addressing that until we see it repeated over a few times. But I do think that there's so many places in which misunderstandings or confusion on some of your strengths or weaknesses can happen because the sales cycle is so complex, and there's a lot of people interpreting your information.
Yeah, thank you. And when we think about positioning and messaging pillars in terms of who you are, who you serve, and why you're better doing business with this organization and solving pain points, under this positioning and go-to-market strategy, what are some of the things that you guys think should be highlighted? And in particular, I see this, through the lens of Joanna, some of the work that you do, Sophia, the work that you do, and Dan, the comm part of it as well. So if you could just talk a little bit about that for me, and Dan, if you could lead us first on that particular question.
Yeah, and going back to what I said earlier, this is really where I like to see kind of that PR engine start to turn on at the beginning of this process, where you can weigh in and bring the right people to the table, whether it's the salespeople, the product and technology people, the executives, marketing, to understand and have the conversations about who are we, how are we different, what do we do that addresses a specific problem or challenge, to your point earlier, Sophia, for a company or even for individuals, titles, and start to pull it together there. Because what I've seen a lot of times in my career is mistakes made where PR, earned media, that top of funnel communications function isn't brought into this, and you're given a little bit of a script down the road that you don't have any ability to inform. And now it's like, hey, go execute. So now you're really becoming the arms and legs of go tell this, but you don't have the understanding or the inner workings of why was it created, and some of the benefit of the research and understanding the personas, et cetera. So I think it's critical to kind of bring all of the functions together when establishing the positioning and messaging, both overarching as well as specifically maybe for different audiences as well, and kind of how that plays out to telling that bigger story. I think that's where you'll find more effective top of funnel efforts through earned media.
Yeah, and in particular, Joanna, if you can opine on this a little bit as well, where Dan, you raised a very good point. Certain aspects or certain functions are brought in at an entrance point into a go-to-market strategy that is more downstream than more upstream in the beginning phases of things. And what I think I hear you're saying is that involve the partners sooner rather than later. And Joanna, if you can maybe just talk a little bit about that as well, because I think that aligns with the work that you do and in terms of that question.
Yeah, we have a very similar approach of creating those holistic themes that we want to stand for as organization. And then those themes, those kind of topics, they are prevalent across all of the channels: product, brand, PR, communication, social media, right? They're becoming our guiding post for everything we try to communicate. And that exercise does not happen often enough in organizations. It's typically very segmented based on the teams. And like Dan mentioned, it doesn't have that holistic 360 view. Another thing we see a lot of is messaging and positioning that's very focused on us, on kind of what we do best. We work with a lot of legacy companies. It is great, but if you really flip the mindset and focus on customer-centric messaging, where every sentence we start with customer pain point, you would be surprised how effective it will be in all of your channels. Just there's still a lot of weism, as we call it, in communications, and it's something that it's definitely effective to update.
Great. Thank you. Sophia, anything or?
No, I think that what Dan and Joanna just talked about is just so key. Aligning that positioning and that messaging, making sure that it's consistent across sales and marketing, internally, PR. That's really going to be what reinforces the narrative across the campaigns, the press releases, analyst briefings, kind of all of those things. So I think that the internal comms are so important to make sure that your shared services teams or the teams executing a lot of this can confidently articulate the differentiation and the competitive strengths, because they're going to be the people who are writing a lot of content for these external facing channels. So I think that just reinforcing that value prop, the personas, the industries we serve, and making sure that your internal people have a good understanding of this too is really important.
Excellent. So we've addressed two big questions, the GTM narrative, the positioning and competitive differentiation, and your messaging pillars. Now we've got all of that kind of solidified, right? The next thing I want to kind of have us kind of tackle and think about is aligning growth through various marketing channels with an account-based marketing strategy, an ABX kind of approach, right? And so we're in this we're in the age of uber sophistication when it comes to marketing. I remember when I first started my career in marketing, it was about direct mail. I remember us sending out tons of direct mail. We had our list, and the goal was to get a 3%. If you got a 3%, you were a rock star. And and remember, I don't know if folks remember the old BRC, business reply card, the whole 9 yards, right? We have evolved significantly in B2B marketing away from that, and now we're into sophisticated ABX marketing using sophisticated platforms that measure engagement, that spits out all kind of metrics. And so with that aspect of this conversation, and Kris, I'm going to be tapping you to help the audience understand this. When we think of one-to-many, one-to-few, one-to-one through the demand gen lens, using technology and the sophisticated platforms out there today, what are some of your experiences with the platforms and the strategy in this area?
Sure. Well, I think at the onset, right, you have to have a robust enough technology stack to be able to do some of those things, to have access to the data, right? So you got to have your Salesforce CRM, you got to have some sort of account-based marketing tool like a 6sense or a demand-based, ideally a marketing automation platform, and those all have to be in concert and talking with each other, and pulling off of a good source of data from your CRM. So as we've talked about, identifying those ICPs, identifying the buyer groups, the personas that you need, making sure you have access to those levers. And then from there, working closely with the product marketing team or with the brand team or with the sales team to identify, okay, within our ICP, do we have, tiers of accounts? So for the tier ones, right, those are going to be your one-to-one accounts. And based off of the amount of resources that you have internally in terms of, actual bodies, like how many of those can you actually handle? Because then you have to personalize the content out to those one-to-one across a variety of channels, whether you're doing, custom landing pages or custom emails, or different custom outreach. You have to actually build those things. So it's identifying in collaboration with the other teams. Okay, these are the accounts that are like, we really want to move the needle on. We're going to do one-to-one approach with them. The rest, okay, these are our target accounts that these would be great. Okay, that's a one to few. Maybe we lower the threshold a little bit. We're not going to go full bore personalization across the board, but we'll do personalized email and we'll build them out, custom landing page. And then everybody else kind of just gets the bread and butter. We'll send out some emails. We'll put a chat bot on the site to welcome them. And there's other ways that you can kind of scale personalization, but not get as granular and as detailed. So all of those things together allow you to have a successful ABM or ABX strategy. But it's a lot of pieces.
Yeah, and there are a lot of pieces. And in particular, Kris, if we can maybe spend a few minutes on, for instance, leveraging your front door, your buyer platform, which is your website, as an example.
Yeah.
What are some of the successes that you've seen in terms of, we all use SEMrush to measure and evaluate. We have, chatbots that are on the website. We have conversion tools with GA and whatnot in terms of measuring who's visited from where and what pages and time on page. But today, is there a capability where you can add customization on a website where if I have a tier 1 visitor to the website that's cookied, can I steer content to them and continue that education process? I don't know if you could shed some light on that.
No, absolutely. Right. Again, you hit the nail on the head, right? They have to be cookied. We have to know who they are and where they're coming from with access to those tools and that information. But we totally can, right? And we've had some success in doing that, both in the one-to-one and the one-to-few accounts, right? For example, we have a big interest in health plans in California. They have a lot of specific regulations, right? So we'll curate content specifically to them, whether it's a specific account or a list of accounts. And so we'll use, the tools that are just, that's like, we've dabbled with different website personalization tools. So when they hit the site, the actual content that's written out on our web pages can change based off of who the visitor is. And then we can also have our website chat or our content engagement platform identify those cookie visitors and serve up different content depending on who the visitor is, right? So if we want a specific message or value proposition to come across to the California audience, that's going to be entirely different than somebody that's going to be visiting from a New York segment, right? And so yeah, to answer your question, yes, we can do that. And it's again, back to that multitude of tools, whether that be a demand base or a 6 Sense or something like that.
Excellent. And what role does content play in terms of driving some of this buyer behavior through the sophisticated use of these applications?
The content piece is huge, right? I think you have to have a variety of different content mediums, whether they be, PDFs, white papers, case studies, videos. And it's also important to note that if you are, actively trying to do an ABM or an ABX campaign, you're going to have different stages of your buyer journey, whether that could be awareness or evaluation stage, right? And you want to make sure that you have your content mapped to those different stages, which I think is an area or a gap that a lot of businesses aren't necessarily tackling. They're just throwing all their content at that audience. But you're going to be a lot more successful if you're able to say, okay, this is our like top of funnel entry level content, and this account is at the top of the funnel there in their awareness. So we're going to serve them up that piece of content, versus if a different account is already in an active opportunity, we're going to send them, want to deliver them a little bit more meaty content, especially if it's a VP or a C-level executive that might be coming to the site. We want to send them something that's a lot more valuable than just our initial like data sheet, right?
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate that deep dive, and it's almost like we could do an entire episode.
I could talk for days on that.
Yeah, the marketing operation platforms and how your tech stack is so important in marketing a B2B SaaS company today. The next topic I wanted to kind of push on, and I think this area is is an area I think is often overlooked. Actually, I shouldn't say that. If you're a startup, it's often utilized because they just want to get the brand out. They want to leverage it through earned media for the expenditure. But when you become, to some degree, a mid-sized company, I personally think this next area that we're gonna cover is often underutilized. And so, Dan, I want you to pick up on this concept, not the concept, but this topic of communications and public relations alignment within a GTM strategy. I know the importance of it. I've often leveraged it with my strategies, and I wanted to see if you could take some time to talk about its importance and why a company should not overlook this component.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that I come up against a lot, and it's been around for a while, right? And that is, it's much easier for executives, boards, PE, VC firms to get a hard, tangible report out on, I'm spending X dollars in marketing, targeted advertising, email campaigns, SEO, et cetera, and I'm getting back X in return, right? So that the ROI is easier to measure. I think where it starts, Ian, when you start to get into PR, is it's harder to measure and be able to say, hey, we spent X amount of dollars in PR and we got X amount back. That's always been a conversation that you have to overcome when you're in the PR business. But I think if you look at public relations, as we've talked a little bit about already, as not working in a silo or not this silver bullet that, hey, we're just going to turn on the PR machine and we're going to try to call some media, we're going to put out a couple press releases, and that is going to be what we need to do. But if you look at it more as truly an integrated function as part of the bigger communications strategy, including marketing, the GTM strategy, all of those pieces that we've talked about, and you look at it more holistic, that's when you really start to see the value of it, right? Because when you talk about PR, in my mind, it's you're creating a brand affinity. Sophia mentioned earlier, like Apple and like their corporate brand and what they're doing and what they're trying to portray in building trust, affinity, credibility with a broad audience. And then you go into some of the specifics of some of the products. You need to create that affinity, that trust, that credibility at a high level for people to recognize the brand. The other thing to think about is, where is the company? You mentioned earlier stage, Ian, or mid-stage or late-stage companies. Where are you in your growth trajectory? Because PR can serve a very specific function. Early on, it might just be, hey, we need to get the name out there. We need to get our executives out there with some thought leadership. But as you move, it's like, oh, well, now we need to start to get some mind share from maybe that financial community because we're looking to get another round of funding. Or down the road, like, hey, we might be looking towards an IPO. I know it's not been the biggest, most popular thing recently in our world in health IT, but those things, those are conversations you need to think about. Where are you in your growth trajectory? What audiences are you trying to attract? And how do we continue to build that trust and affinity and awareness with our audiences there? So, those are some things that I think about, like, where are you in your growth trajectory? What are you trying to accomplish? What are we doing at a high level? And then how does that higher level story feed into product, technology? Where can we bring in voice of customer, voice of executives for thought leadership? So all of those things pull together under what I'd call like an integrated PR strategy that has bigger impact, that you can show, hey, here's how we're moving the needle and tying it to lead gen and ultimately sales, which everybody's trying to do today.
Yeah, and to add a little bit to that, a part of me is that we're off the mindset because it's about driving growth, and everybody thinks that driving growth means you have to sell. At the end of the day, all of marketing is selling, but there are strategies in which we can sell without coming off as if we're selling. And I think that the communication part of it is one where we can do that, because providing thought leadership and subject matter expertise where you have an internal product leader or the leader from a particular company who becomes a talking head on a particular topic industry-wide is in essence adding value to the pipeline growth because you're given awareness around the company and the product through that individual. And I think oftentimes that's not fully understood. Sometimes it is, and some leaders and product CEOs, for instance, like that stuff and embrace it. But other times I feel that others shy away from it because they're afraid of speaking publicly. And I think that those are oftentimes missed opportunities. I'm not sure if that makes sense, and I don't know if you could shed some more light on that, Dan.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. It depends too on the company, right? Like you might know you've got a really solid rock star executive that you can use, and maybe the rest of the bench isn't as strong, so you start with one. But then, as we all know, like some of the egos start to get involved. People start to see their coworkers getting some attention in the media, and now you can kind of build out the bench. But I think a safe way that I look at it is if you can build out a bench, not too much of a bench, because what you want to do is associate a few names with the brand. So when you start to see those names in the media, you think of the company's brand. If you water it down too much, it becomes a little bit overwhelming. But you also want to expand it to usually 3 or 4 is a good number, and identify what pillars can each of those executives talk about. So to your point, Ian, maybe people are a little uncomfortable. Well, if you say, hey, you're the CEO, you're going to talk about market and company vision and higher level milestones within the company and the company's growth, they feel a little more comfortable. And then you maybe bring in the CTO and you're going to talk about market, technology, innovation, direction from the technology standpoint, and tie it back to how what we're doing as a company is helping to fuel that market growth, solve customer pain points. So you identify pillars for each of those executives where they feel comfortable and can really share their expertise, but you keep it somewhat limited so you're not watering it down too much.
Thank you. And, in terms of the role of earned media and content amplification as part of the GTM strategy, could you just take a minute and maybe let us know your insights into why that is so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Joanna mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that there's surveys out there that talk about, word of mouth, right? And I think that's a good place to start is if you're going to make a purchasing decision or you're going to hear about a brand or a company and give it consideration, you're more likely to give it serious consideration or do a little bit more research if you're hearing about it from a friend or someone that you trust, right? So I look at PR as really strong word of mouth, where you are getting people, audiences that you're reaching through targeted content, messages, social media, that you're bringing together to tell a story to, and they're telling their friends about it, which is going to add to it. So I think the place where I start is this word of mouth marketing or advertising or PR. The word of mouth is a big part of it. So that's a huge benefit, I think, of PR is that word of mouth. And there's tons of studies out there that back that up, that people are going to buy from brands they know are based on recommendations. That's a starting point. And I don't know if that answers your question. I can go in other directions too.
Yeah, I'm just being cognizant of the time, and I think that's a good answer, Dan. I appreciate that. The one area that I also wanted to touch on with the team is within the area of marketing and sales collaboration. And when I talk about marketing and sales collaboration, it should actually be marketing, sales and customer success collaboration. I think CS or account management sometimes get overlooked, and it's the cross-sell, upsell opportunities just as important. It's good to leverage a low-hanging fruit with regards to a cross-upsell than is sometimes to acquire a new logo. So in this particular area, when I think about MarTech and operations and building the bridge between marketing, sales, and customer success, Kris and Janet, could you guys opine on that a little bit for me? And how do you work together and what roles do you play with each other? Janet, you want to take this first, or Kris?
Sure. So it's interesting because my team reported up through marketing when I was first hired where I work right now. And I had never seen that before. We were always in sales. So the BDR team was very much in sync with everything that was going on in marketing. And we were blessed to have Kris and our leadership support to really get any type of software or resources or time to collaborate to make sure that the handoffs were smooth, they were effective. And I think we ended up tripling or quadrupling our pipeline that year when we really focused on working together and being collaborative. One thing that Kris and the BDR team do together is they don't just look at, how do we get people in our pipeline, but how do we shorten the sales cycle? What can we do through technology to make the experience white glove for the buyers? And Kris can speak more to how we're using software for that, but I really think we've fine-tuned it where the CRO, the CEO, the salespeople, and the CSEs will ask Kris's team for help on, we've just had this meeting. They're asking a lot of questions around this, and I'd like to really set up a nice spot for them to be able to dive deeper into this topic and also share it amongst their team in a private way. So it's really kind of elevated the way we do sales, and just making sure that we are giving that very, respectful experience to whoever the executives are, but not losing that history, because sometimes we'll lose an executive or another executive will come in and want to be part of the buying process. We've got all that experience created so they can very quickly get spun up. So I think just really being tight with everybody in marketing and the sales team has really paid off for us.
And Kris, on the tool side, and how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think right. It's just about the collaboration piece is key, and just having those synergies between the sales and the customer success teams, as you mentioned, and meeting them kind of where they are has been a lesson that I've learned over the last couple of years of learning what sorts of information and tools are gonna be valuable to them rather than trying to push things on them. I ran into a lot of roadblocks earlier on in my career, and I've figured out what not to do. So feel free to ask if you want to know some of those things. But I would say, we do have access to a lot of great data and information and tools, and it's arming the sales team with those items, right? So as in terms of like the handoff process, okay, well, we have our account journey. So identifying what accounts or what buying groups are showing those signals, we'll flag that and send an alert or an automation over to the BDR, depending on the size of your team and territories and whatnot. That's all can be sorted out. But having that like handshake moment of like, okay, this has now become a marketing qualified account. It's reached our desired threshold of all the things that we're looking for. It's now ready for you, the BDR, to like do some outreach and engagement, whether you use a sales loft tool or an outreach, right? You can do those sorts of things. We've had a lot of success lately with, as I think Janet was alluding to, like creating what we call like a digital sales room. So it's a hub that the salesperson or the BDR can access and create. They can add in content, whether it be marketing content and collateral. They can add in their own items, whether that be like custom PowerPoint or demos or videos or like meeting logs. And it's just a shared space that they can give to the prospect or the customer, and then they can share it within their organization and say, hey, to the buying group members, like here's the digital sales room, and has all the content that we need to help us make our educated decision. And then at the back end, right, we obviously get great data on that, because then we can see from that digital sales room now who's engaging with that content, who's looking at it, are they continuing to show that momentum and those signals. And so it helps to create that partnership between the marketing and the marketing operations team and the other go-to-market teams, and making sure that we're all sharing the same tools and data.
And what kind of, you don't have to get in deep dive on them, but what kind of applications are you using?
Oh, sure. So in-house, we use our ABM tools. We use demand-based, so that helps us with our account journeys and our buying groups and our personas and identifying those engagement trends, as you mentioned. We are using Uberflip now for like our resource library, and that also is what we use to create those digital sales rooms, like those singular hubs. We also use that for some of our like ABM campaigns, the one to few, one to many. We'll create different content streams based on what campaigns we're running. Our BDR team uses SalesLoft for their personal outreach. And then we are using Qualified for our chatbot experiences. So those are kind of like the core suite, and then obviously Salesforce for CRM. But those are kind of like the core products that generate a lot of the action between all the teams.
Excellent.
Ian, I'd like to say
Yeah,
one
please
more
go
thing on the way we collaborate with Chris's team. He has someone that is incredible at analyzing the data and really trying to figure out, why did a sale work? Why was the yield analysis quicker this time? Or why didn't we, win the business? And we will unbundle the sales cycle, and then all of a sudden he's realizing patterns. Let's say that after the RFP, there's a longer gap than there used to be. What can we be doing at that time to really be sharing content that will help move this along? Or there's other situations where, Chris's team is just quickly pivoting with the other teams in marketing to try to help that sales cycle become a formulation that we can predict, rather than these endless stops and starts or turn around or whatever. So that's a really cool thing that we've been doing with them, and I think it pays off.
Yeah, and I think part of that goes back to what Sophia had mentioned with the win-loss analysis. Like we end up learning a good deal from that, and we are able to then get those little nuggets of those learnings, like that you're mentioning, Janet. Where are those gaps that we in the sales cycle that we can tighten things up, making sure that do we have all of the like buying group members identified early enough on in the process, and we're not getting those like late additions where then that kind of will set you back, and we got to educate them. So it all kind of ties together, but that's a great point.
Yeah, and actually, Kris, that gives me the last question in this segment, which is reporting.
Yeah.
With any go-to-market strategy, you want to always assess efficacy. And could you share with us briefly with regards to how do you guys go about reporting the success of campaigns, and what kind of reports do you use?
A variety of different things. I think it depends on the audience that you're reporting out to. So we do a combination of different things. We'll do what we, our monthly reporting package that kind of gives a synopsis of all the campaigns that we're running and the impact that it's had. And we will use, for example, demand-based to identify, okay, for these, these target accounts in this segment, right? These are the ones that have shown engagement over the past couple of months. If we can identify which individuals or personas or buying group members, right, to flag those to ideally the sales team or the CSE team to say, hey, here's a little nugget of activity that's happened over the previous month. You can use this if you have an upcoming conversation. So being able to, as Janet said, kind of synthesize that data down into actionable nuggets, and then making sure that we are able to deliver it to the right individuals. So we've learned a lot over the last couple of years of like, what's valuable, what's not, and like keeping that feedback loop with the stakeholders that are consuming those reports is also super valuable. So whatever we deliver, we always try to get, is this helpful for you? Do you not care? If you don't care, we'll take it off and we'll add something else new. So like just continue to iterate on it. And we just try to automate as much as possible. So with the tools and the technology that we have, making sure that, again, we have the sales territories assigned. So I can say, hey, Ian, this is your territory list, and these are the accounts that you cover. I have an automated list that gets sent out to you every month or every week, right, of your and what engagement activities your accounts have taken, and the people that you're trying to get in touch with have taken, so that when you go sign in on Sunday or Monday and you're like ready to go, you have your report of what happened in the last week, and you can kind of plan accordingly.
This is great. I can't believe how the hour has already flown by. So closing thoughts. In terms of final thoughts on breaking down silos, driving engagement, and ensuring go-to-market success, this is just round robin. So far we've had a very robust conversation. What are the final thoughts on this subject, guys? What do you think companies need to really give a lot of thought to throughout the entire journey, and make sure that do's and don'ts. Quick round robin. I don't know, Joanna, you want to jump first?
Sure. Very quickly, just putting extra emphasis of working as one team. So trust and transparency over processes. It will have a huge impact on your brand, on your sales, on your pipeline, on your brand perception, and on your internal employees. So working as a one team on the success of the brand.
Sophia?
I can't stress that enough. I think, marketing so often runs into going back into our silos, but given everything we just talked about today, I think if product marketing doesn't work closely with brand marketing, if they are not working then closely with comms to make sure that, all of that messaging is consistent, and then working with, digital marketing teams or marketing operations teams to make sure that when that messaging goes out, it is also the same, making sure that sales is included on the latest, whether it's the latest product messaging or competitive intel. I think that really is what's going to make the difference, not only to the internal team, but to the rest of the organization as well.
Dan?
Yeah, well said by both of them. So I think that choreography and integration is key. I'll say one thing from like a earned media PR specific maybe takeaway is I always counsel clients, it's not the finish line, it's the starting line. So whether it's a great piece of coverage that you get, or an award, or a speaking opportunity that you get for an executive, that isn't the finish line, it's the starting line. So going back to what we're saying about all of this integration, how do you use that output of PR and feed it back into the larger marketing and sales cycle for greater impact? And I think a lot of times companies overlook that, and it's important.
Janet?
Sure. I think just being open-minded to break things down and rebuild them, keep revisiting where you're at, and then how can we build it stronger or change things that will make more efficiency. I think the more you do the work in the beginning, the better you just get the benefits from it in the end, and it runs like a machine. So I think just really doing the work.
And Kris?
Yeah. All great ideas. So just echoing what everybody else said, but as we said, right, you kind of have the structure. You got to have everybody working together and be flexible. Right, it's kind of a dynamic approach. You got to be eager to like learn what's working, what's not working, and just change it as you go. Right. Yeah.
Well, guys, that's a wrap. Joanna Bittle, Kris Catterall, Dan Martin, Janet Barros, Sophia Moran, thank you for an insightful session on go-to-market strategy success roadmap. To be honest, guys, we could do this for probably a couple more hours with going down different aspects of what we've all contributed. But I just wanted to say thank you for spending some time with us with this very valuable discussion, and to our partners at eMarketing Association. Christine and Kevin, thank you, and everyone, have a great day.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.